Oh, are you setting up a lemonade stand?
Yep, I've done market research, set my prices accordingly, and hired my first employee. She's only 4, and her resume was written in crayon, but she shows some serious potential.
Oh, really? Well, she's not exactly known for follow-through. So how do you plan on keeping her around when it gets really hot outside?
I already thought about that. I'm gonna give her equity alongside her 10 cents an hour pay. So the harder she works, the higher the value of the company and the more she'll ultimately make.
I sort of feel like lollipops would be more effective.
But the competition is stiff out there. Places like Starbucks and Whole Foods are offering this stuff now, and I gotta keep up.
Okay, hon, well, when she starts crying about how complicated her taxes are, don't say I didn't warn you.
When an employee is granted ownership in the company alongside a normal salary, it's known as equity compensation. In the olden days, this sort of thing was reserved for highfalutin C-suite executives, but due to changes in tax laws over time, they've enjoyed phases of popularity since the 1950s. During the dot-com boom, tech companies left and right used it as a way to attract and retain talent, and even now, Silicon Valley is seemingly crawling with overnight millionaires, all thanks to equity. Now it seems like everyone from fast food joints to grocery stores are offering employees a way into the game.
Equity compensation is great for the employer for many reasons. It requires less cash flow on their part, and it encourages employees to feel some investment in the company, which can improve productivity and keep employees around longer. They don't call them golden handcuffs for nothing.
Of course, it's not just good for the employers. Depending on when it's granted to you and how much you profit, it's possible you can pay less tax on this form of income. If you join a company early on, the shares you're granted could also skyrocket in value. But this type of compensation can come in a bunch of different forms, which can be hard to understand and may end up feeling more like a burden than a boon. So let's see if we can shed a bit of light on these things.
Let's start with the most well-known form. Stock options. We've highlighted what these are in a previous episode, but as a refresher, a stock option is the right to buy a stock at a certain price. Why would this be valuable? Well, if the stock goes up in value, you can buy it, also known as exercising, at the strike price, the amount you have the right to buy it for, and then sell it at a profit. Usually there's a limited amount of time in which you can take advantage of this, generally around 10 years.
There are a few different kinds of options, but the most widely used are known as non-qualified stock options. They can be granted to anyone, management, employees, even contractors and consultants. But if you manage to sell them for a profit, it's going to be taxed as ordinary income. The profits are not qualified for beneficial tax treatment by the IRS.
Employee stock options, or ESOs, work similarly, except they can only be offered to employees, and there is usually a vesting schedule attached. So, for example, you might be granted 1,000 options, but you only get access to 25% of them after your first year, then another 25% after your second year, and so on. Again, the purpose of this structure is to keep you around for longer. Employee turnover is vastly expensive, so companies do everything they can to avoid it.
ISOs, or incentive stock options, are usually granted by companies that are already publicly traded or intent on becoming so shortly. They're offered to key employees and top management. But why would someone that's able to command a high salary be interested in this form of compensation? It basically comes down to tax savings.
Take Roberta. She is a highly qualified software engineer and has 2 different job offers. One from an established company at a $200,000 base salary, and the other one from a startup offering her $160,000 with a grant of ISOs upon signing. They're currently worth about $40,000. If she takes option 1, that would put her in the 32% tax bracket. Now, that doesn't mean she's paying 32% of every dollar she's making. For more on that, check out our video on how progressive taxation works. But it's significant. If she takes the second option, she stays in the 24% bracket, and she'll only pay 15% capital gains on the options. Sounds good, right?
If only it were so straightforward. Something you have to watch out for is the bargain element. This is the difference between the market price and the strike price, essentially the discount you get on the option. If Roberta's company stock is worth $100 per share, and she can buy it for as little as $10, the bargain element is $90, and that's taxed as ordinary income. If she held the stock for a little bit longer after she exercised it, and it goes up to $120 a share, then the $20 is subject to the more favorable capital gains tax rate.
Her shares must also be held for more than 1 year from the date she sells them, and 2 years from the time they were granted for her to get that benefit. This could possibly keep her stuck in a job she doesn't end up liking. And if the stock price goes down instead, she could be underwater on her options. Executing a large amount of ISOs could also potentially flip her into an alternate tax universe called the alternative minimum tax. So proceed with caution.
Another way that employers offer access to equity is through an Employee Stock Purchase Plan, or ESPP. It's similar to a 401k in that it involves setting up a deduction from your paycheck, which is used to purchase company stock at a discounted price, sometimes as much as 15%. Pretty sweet, right? Of course, there are some catches. The IRS puts limits on how much you can shovel into such a thing, and timing the sale can leave you in the position of having to choose between diversifying your portfolio or possibly getting a tax break if you hold onto them an extra year. A tough call for many.
Of course, a company could just give you stock outright. Employees are generally granted stock in the form of RSUs, or restricted stock units. When they're initially granted, they're yours only on paper. You can't sell them off until they vest, which they do in chunks over time. Once vested, they are considered taxable income for that year, even if you don't sell them immediately. Thankfully, unlike options, RSUs always have some value to you, even if they go down in value from the time of the grant. But remember, if you leave the company, the unvested shares vanish into thin air.
If you're offered a significant amount of equity compensation, hiring a professional planner who is a fiduciary will enable you to make the best calls for your overall financial health. But here are 3 main things to look out for when trying to make a decision.
Number 1. Figure out your tax liability. The form that this compensation takes and the dates at which you decide to sell things can make a massive difference on how much you pocket. So reach out to a CPA if you have questions. Sometimes even your HR department will be able to provide you with some guidance.
Number 2, watch out for diversification. When you're relying on a single company's performance, not only for your income, but also your net worth, it can get really risky. Hopefully you're working for a company that you believe in, but don't let that blind you to the possibility that things can take a downturn at any time.
Number 3, remember that this company is not granting you this stuff out of the kindness of their corporate hearts. They want to keep you from jumping ship when the going gets tough.
But money is a renewable resource, time is not. Don't let things like possible future payouts keep you from seeking out a healthier or more rewarding workplace. And that's our 2 cents.
Thanks to our patrons for keeping 2 Cents financially healthy. Click the link in the description to become a 2 Cents patron.
For more advice on evaluating employment compensation, check out our video, How to Weigh Job Benefits.